Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into some really powerful source material, excerpts from The Forgotten Soldier by Guy Sajer, translated by Lily Emmett.
Yeah, that's quite something.
And this isn't your typical broad historical overview of World War II. What we have here is an intensely personal account, taking you right onto the Eastern Front through the eyes of a young German soldier, really just a boy experiencing it all firsthand.
That's right. The source material lays out his journey in vivid, often brutal detail. We'll follow him from the initial, almost naive days of training through the shock of frontline combat, the grinding reality of relentless retreat, the physical and psychological toll of sickness and deprivation, and the sheer desperate struggle just to stay alive. It's a view from the absolute bottom, focusing on his individual perspective.
And that's exactly our mission for this deep dive, to immerse ourselves in what it felt like to be this soldier, to understand the specific granular challenges he faced every single day, to witness the moments of unexpected humanity mixed with the absolute horror, and to grasp the lasting impact of living through something so profoundly traumatic.
Right.
We're drawing only from the details he shares in these pages, so let's dive in.
Okay. His story begins in Poland around September and October of 1942. He arrives and is immediately thrown into intensive training.
And the source makes it clear this was anything but easy. He described a daily routine starting at 5 a.m. featuring exercises like crossing a dammed pond in full gear,
Yeah,
firing hundreds of cartridges, throwing practice grenades. It sounds relentlessly physical.
I was. But what's interesting is he finds a strange sense of accomplishment amidst the exertion.
Yeah.
He becomes a rapid marksman, and there's a simple, almost primal pleasure he finds in the sound of tramping feet during marches, calling it a marvelous sense of life, despite how worn out he is. Sort of a weird contrast.
Yeah. He's also learning practical things that give him confidence, like driving different vehicles, a large motorcycle, a VW, and a Steiner, which is like a military Jeep, right?
Basically, he finds it surprisingly easy, almost child's play, after a while. And there's camaraderie, too. He's part of a small group, about 15, and he mentions them enjoying themselves strikingly like the boys we are.
Wow. Just a glimpse of youth there.
A fleeting glimpse, yeah, before everything changes.
So the journey toward the front proper happens by train. He describes the cold in those open cars, the strictness of the Feldwebel, that's a German sergeant named Laus, who he notes isn't a bully, but, a man with a clear idea of how the job should be done.
Right, professional, maybe?
And there's a constant low-level threat mentioned from potential terrorists along the line.
Yeah, that tension's already there.
Yeah.
And he shares a specific revealing moment. Seeing a figure next to the tracks, maybe a Polish woodcutter, aiming his rifle, his Mauser.
Which he felt useless with before, right?
Exactly. He aims it, but deliberately fires over the man's head. And then he immediately regrets it.
Yeah.
Not out of empathy, perhaps, but thinking he's possibly just made another enemy for the Reich.
Wow, that's complex. Shows the mindset already.
It really does. Conflicting thoughts even early on.
The train ride gets more tense after that.
Seems so. It slows, stops on a secondary track, and another blacked-out locomotive arrives, pushing a materials car ahead of it. There's this sense of unseen danger of moving into a different, more cautious zone.
Okay.
They arrive near Minsk, and the conditions begin to deteriorate. Initial billets are crowded huts, or izizbas as they're called,
Right.
later replaced by tents. Vermin becomes a major issue, requiring disinfection when they return to Minsk briefly.
Ugh. And he describes feeling stuck guarding a vehicle depot near Minsk. That rifle still feels useless, his hands blistered from shoveling.
Yeah, mundane misery.
And the cold. He mentions it specifically, around 5 degrees below zero, biting into him. Just hardship before the real chaos.
And that chaos arrives when they reach the actual front lines, near the Don River. The source paints a stark, unforgettable contrast. The soldiers, they felt they were in Poland.
Yeah, the ones marching smartly.
Exactly. Admiring their uniforms and helmets. But, well, they vanish instantly.
What do they see instead?
They look at the soldiers already there and see bundles of rags, underfed, filthy, constantly shivering,
Oh, man.
feeling like they are the junior maidservants of the army compared to these hardened, broken men. It's a shock.
Into that reality, the news about Stalingrad drops.
Yeah, devastating news. The captain makes the formal announcement, Marshal von Paulus and the 6th Army have surrendered.
He notes the detail that von Paulus had apparently awarded every soldier the Bravery Cross before laying down arms.
A small gesture, maybe. But then, even more impactful, the last message is read out, from Heinrich Stoda in the ruins of the Red October factory.
Oh, I remember reading this part.
7 survivors, out of ammo, determined to die having done their duty. His final words, "Long live Germany, Heil Hitler." The source describes the profound anxiety and grief this message triggered.
Must have been crushing, not just a defeat, but something deeper.
Absolutely. A psychological blow. Shakes their whole belief system, you have to imagine.
And immediately they're exposed to the aftermath of the fighting, shelters overflowing with wounded.
Yeah, and laying out rows of horribly burned bodies searching for identity tags.
To send home with that chilling citation, fallen like a hero on the field of honor for Germany and for the Fuhrer, just brutal.
And there's a grim, disturbing detail about a celebration after a battle won on the dawn. It includes prizing open the mouths of dying men to toast with vodka.
Oh, that's serious.
Yeah, it's a moment that just screams Pyrrhic victory, winning at an unbearable, dehumanizing cost.
And right after that, he gets separated from friends like Hals and Lenson.
3/4 of their company is sent away with the wounded. It just underscores how vital those connections were already becoming. In this environment, those bonds are everything.
Wow. Okay, so things are already incredibly bleak. Does he get any kind of break?
He does, eventually. A rare period of leave where he meets Paula. It's a moment of escape, of connection away from the front's brutality.
A bit of normalcy, maybe?
For a moment. But war finds him even there. Suddenly, the sinister sound of air raid sirens howling in unison shatters the peace.
Even on leave. He notes the surprise daytime raids near the capital were unusual, right?
Yeah, apparently so. He describes seeing German fighters, Focke-Wulfs, taking off, counting them with Paula, shouting encouragement.
Still has that patriotic flicker then.
A bit, yeah. But the scale of the attack is overwhelming. 1,100 British and American bombers mentioned.
1,100.
Against only about 60 German fighters in the Berlin region that day. The sound just drowns everything out.
I can't even imagine.
They witness the bombing. Whistling clusters of bombs falling, the earth trembling, houses exploding into flame, oil depots burning. He describes a suburb being literally blotted out, trees ripped from the ground, planes falling from the sky, just utter devastation.
And Paula, how does she react?
The focus shifts to her reaction, her sheer terror, pressing against him, trembling. They take cover in a hole as flaming debris falls around them.
Terrifying.
The aftermath is horrific. The late-action bombs still exploding, the shrieking of Tempelhof, where 22,000 lives were lost.
22,000.
Paula is shaken, saying, "I feel terrible. I'm filthy." But amidst this horror, there's a moment of deeper emotional connection, moving past simple flirting, kissing her hair.
Finding something human in the chaos.
Exactly. But the goodbye at the Silesian station is incredibly painful. The platform itself is damaged by bombs. Paula gives him a package they swear to write, promise to marry.
Clinging to hope.
Desperately clinging to the hope of the war must end soon.
But reality hits hard. The station master calling out destinations.
Poznan, Warsaw, Lublin, Lvov, Russia. A stark, unavoidable reminder he's going back to the east.
And this return marks the beginning of something the source describes as the grand debacle.
Yeah, the major retreat. Starts autumn 1943.
Why then? What triggered it?
The cause is clear. Russian forces breaking through the re-established front west of Belgorod with irresistible momentum, just too strong.
And the Germans were slow to react.
Seems so. The order to withdraw to the Dnieper River line comes too late, leading to a chaotic, continuous pursuit by a newly mobile enemy. Panic and confusion are rampant.
And the cost, higher than the advance.
Significantly higher in lives, yeah. This delayed retreat was brutal.
And the psychological impact you mentioned earlier. That shift.
It becomes profound now. They know they're likely going to be killed, just buying time for larger movements. The motivation shifts entirely. No longer ideology or homeland.
What then?
They fight from simple fear. Fought for ourselves, fighting like rats when cornered. It's just pure survival instinct overriding everything else.
Wow. And the physical toll must have been immense too.
Oh, definitely. Their clothes are heavy, waterlogged, boots are worn through. Fever is common. They can't lie down except on soaking ground.
Miserable.
And in a bizarre twist, they bless gray skies and rain because it means protection from enemy aircraft.
That says everything, doesn't it? Preferring misery over air attack.
It does. There's a horrific incident described where a Russian plane is shot down but crashes directly onto their convoy.
Oh no.
Crushing a truck full of wounded men and creating a crater 20 yards wide filled with shattered flesh.
Why?
And the numbness he describes is chilling. No one cried out. In fact, almost no one looked. They just kept going,
Desensitized. Come
to an
on.
incredible degree. He struggles with severe illness himself, diarrhea, but somehow gets to a hospital in Vinica. Treatment focuses on intestinal flora damage, apparently.
Right.
He had a long recovery, fever persisting. He recalls the simple comfort of watching snow fall from a heated dormitory window. A tiny moment of peace.
And his friend Halls visits him.
Yeah, twice. Even brings mail, thanks to a temporary role as a postal assistant. Those little things, those connections, were probably lifelines.
Definitely. But the peace doesn't last long, I assume.
No. Leaving the hospital, any thought of convalescence leave is immediately canceled in Lublin. The front calls him back.
Straight back into it. And there's an odd interaction with a sergeant.
Yeah, Stabsville Whipple, a senior NCO,
Huh.
talks about a serious trial for the fatherland and congratulates the soldier for distinguishing himself against partisans.
But he hadn't.
No, he hadn't fired a shot. It's this moment of dark irony. You
Yeah.
know, the disconnect between the official story and the reality on the ground.
Absolutely. So, back towards the fighting. Is travel any easier?
Not at all. He finds brief comfort in a warm, carpeted house used as a dormitory, learning to use waiting periods simply to sleep, to escape thinking. He feels reflection added nothing, except increased awareness of the misery.
Just trying to numb himself.
Pretty much. Travel back toward the front is agonizingly slow. Terrible roads, deep mud, incredible quagmires. Wooden pavements offer some help, but it's still 8 hours to go just 90 miles.
Grueling.
And again, snow flurries and rain are welcome for the protection they offer from aircraft.
That constant threat from the air.
Always there. Returning to the front means trying to find their regiment amidst total disarray. He describes encountering an officer who looks old and ill, utterly bewildered by his map, unable to provide clear directions.
Just lost in the chaos.
Pervasive feeling of being lost, yeah. Having to rely on luck and finding other units. Sleeping conditions are miserable, cold, dense fog that burned our throats. They try to keep warm with lamp heaters, the sentries outside stamping their feet against the cold.
And the mental strain continues.
Constant. Tense imagination, thoughts of home, family, lovers, constantly running through the possible endings, surrender, captivity, flight, or a quick death.
Always contemplating the end.
And he reiterates that crucial shift in motivation. It's no longer about Hitler, Nazism, the Reich, or even protecting family back home. It's pure fear.
Fear as the primary driver.
Which he notes is stronger than any doctrine. A core insight into the soldier's survival instinct, really.
Is there any let-up at all?
There is, surprisingly.
Yeah.
A brief period of relative rest and training in a village, 3 good weeks of rest, with magnificent weather. He's able to write to Paula.
Okay, a bit of respite.
Yeah, and there's a surprising detail. Hals has a relationship with a Russian girl, even sharing her favors with, remarkably, the Catholic chaplain.
Wait, what? The chaplain?
Yeah, it's another one of those strange, unpredictable human moments that persist even in that environment.
Wow. Okay. But it doesn't last.
No, short-lived. The distant rumble of guns returns, signaling a renewed Russian breakthrough. The grand debacle is accelerating.
Back to the grind.
And the spirit of training changes. It's no longer like an athletic team preparing for a competition, but fueled by desperation, especially as rations dwindle and they have to forage. He mentions fishing with explosives, led by their captain, WWII.
Fishing with explosives. Resourceful, I guess.
Or desperate. The grim reality of partisan activity also becomes undeniable. 2 men disappear.
Oh, dear.
And the search parties run into partisans, resulting in 5 stupid deaths without finding the missing soldiers.
This pointless loss.
And that leads to an incredibly disturbing encounter with villagers suspected of being partisans. He sees intense hatred on their faces. The soldiers' own anger boils over, fueled by remembering tortured comrades.
A volatile situation.
Very. But Captain Wesereo steps in, white with fury, speaking Russian. He orders the burial of the dead, but then makes this chilling statement.
What does he say?
Excusing himself for shooting civilians by saying they were misled into arming by false propaganda. Then he warns the villagers of dire consequences for further hostility.
That's deeply unsettling. The moral lines completely blur.
Utterly. It captures the horrific compromises of this conflict.
And Wesereo himself. Something happens to him.
Shortly after this, yeah, he's killed. His Steiner hits a mine. Wreckage, casualties. Wesereo is severely wounded, but described as having a smiling face.
Smiling.
Yeah. Speaking of collective adventure and unity, handing over an envelope for his family and then dying.
That's quite an image. How does the company react?
The impact is immense. They grieve deeply, feeling they've lost a friend. The source says his death felt impossible, as impossible to us as life without their parents seems to small children.
Wow, like losing their anchor.
Exactly. It shows the depth of the bond and the sense of being truly abandoned without his leadership.
So the retreat just gets worse after that.
It continues, evolving into a partisan style of movement in small groups rather than formal marching. Everyone is exhausted, the pace slows, breath and strength are hoarded.
And hungry, presumably.
Constantly. Constant hunger is a rumble from the great hollow of emptiness which filled our stomachs.
There's that moment of dark humor about the leaflets, right?
Yeah, grief. Russian reconnaissance planes drop leaflets. A soldier observes, Ivan doesn't seem to understand. If we can't eat, we can't crap. He's gone and sent us a lot of paper.
Gallows humor in the face of utter desperation.
That's it exactly. And the constant presence of the approaching front, the enemy, is ever present. Hearing artillery means realizing it's the front. We'll be arriving in a day or a day and a half.
No escape.
Seems like it. A particularly harrowing encounter is with other retreating troops near the front, 10,000 men, described as being in a pitiful state.
Worse than them.
Apparently so. They're so desperate they storm their own trucks for food and medicine. He sees nauseatingly wounded men on litters made of branches, men numbed by too much disaster, acting like wolves terrified of starvation, ready to commit murder for food.
My God.
He even notes they later massacred villages for supplies. The mutual shock between the two groups at the other state is immense. They're horrified by each other.
Unbelievable spiral downwards. Any moments of luck?
He recounts one. Crossing a field and being attacked by Russian Yabos, those ground attack planes.
Right.
Running, diving into a ditch just as rockets hit. His companions think they're dead. They emerge covered in dust. Pure chance survival.
Just pure luck. And food. How are they managing?
Desperate measures. Finding Jerusalem artichokes or taking potatoes from Russians at gunpoint, whatever it takes.
Survival at any cost.
Pretty much. Eventually, they are swept up into an interminable convoy retreating to Romania, feeling inescapably absorbed into the larger, chaotic movement.
Just swept along by the tide of defeat.
Which leads them eventually to the defense of Memel. Sajer describes it powerfully as a small island of courage drawn from an infinity of anguish.
Memoir, that's the final stand, isn't it? What were conditions like by then?
Truly horrific. The physical state. Bony bodies, emaciated like two sticks, intense chest pain. He notes his faces were as gray as the faces of the dead, stating there was scarcely any difference between our faces and the faces of the dead.
Just walking skeletons, basically.
Essentially. And the cold is brutal, bitterly cold. Shivering is constant, illness returns. Going outside to the field kitchen for food is agonizing.
But necessary.
Yeah, though receiving hot soup provides temporary relief, making them feel much better. The envy they feel toward anyone waiting for a hot shower is a telling detail. Little comforts become huge.
Then there's a sudden order.
Yeah, for immediate departure. There's relief at not having to undress, quickly followed by a grim acceptance.
They'd prefer to keep their lice for warmth.
Prefer lice for warmth.
That's desperate.
It really is. The journey continues in overloaded open trucks on muddy roads, described as a vast sea of mud, constantly spraying them.
And psychologically? Are they holding on?
Hope is rapidly draining away. He describes screaming involuntarily from exhaustion. Some laugh hysterically, others pray.
Breaking point.
Close to it. The death of Smelens, who waited in vain for news of his brother, underscores the despair. Here, in Memel, it was too late for the all-powerful. Even faith seems lost.
Is there any hope of evacuation?
Initial military evacuations by sea offer a glimmer. The gravely wounded have priority, except hopeless cases. There's an impatient joy among the less seriously injured, even gangrenous cases forgetting their pain. A veil of confidence seems to briefly settle over the town. But this hope is constantly battered by relentless air attacks. Ships are gutted by bombs, blocking the piers, and mutilating corpses float in the debris.
Constant danger, even trying to escape.
Always. And he describes being summoned to deal with a bombed barge packed with men. It's pure horror. Boots were red with blood. It was human refuse. The smell of bodies torn open.
Oh, God.
Working in the cold water provides a strange, temporary relief from the smell, though it quickly becomes torture.
Nightmare. And the actual defense.
The final moments are chaotic. Russians fire haphazardly. Moving over wreckage is difficult. They reach their position just a hole where we would freeze for hours and perhaps even die.
Just a hole to die in.
And then there's the story of Wiener's last stand. setting up his machine gun, sweeping the crest, refusing to retreat.
Why wouldn't he retreat?
He tells them he's had enough of fighting and retreating, and chillingly predicts, "There'll be no room for me after the war, remember."
Oh, wow.
His voice is drowned by the gunfire before smoke rises from his position after they leave. A soldier choosing his own end.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Tragic. Then the fighting continues.
Intensely. Guns roaring, wounded groaning, men cling to their guns as their last salvation. Those who had gone to the piers, hoping for boats, return to defense posts out of sheer self-interest.
Clubbage at Memo Falls.
Exactly. They won't be evacuated.
Yeah.
They fight because, as Sajer puts it, there was no other possibility.
No choice left.
Despair mounts as the expected boats don't come. They fear abandonment. The feeling that nothing could stop Ivan now leads to uncontrollable trembling.
Terror setting in.
Yeah. In a gut-wrenching moment, Halls briefly aims his gun at his own head before lowering it.
Jesus. That close.
That close. Boats do eventually arrive, sparking a desperate every man for himself rush aboard. Men are fighting among each other.
Chaos.
Total chaos. They're too far away, watching powerless as others leave, further weakening their defense.
And then, how does it end for him?
After these final brutal moments facing enemy tanks, the war ends for this soldier in a way he describes as unprecedented on the Eastern Front.
How so?
English half-tracks arrive. Two of their men stand up with hands raised.
Surrendering to the British on the Eastern Front.
Exactly. Unheard of, he says. There's confusion, intense uncertainty. Will the English machine guns cut them down? Will their own leaders shoot them for attempting surrender?
What do they do?
Prompted by an old man next to him, the soldier decides to stand up and walk towards the English. Halls joins him, though without raising his hand.
Just walks towards them. Was he scared?
The fear he describes is intense, pounding hearts and dry mouths. He calls it the only time I was ever afraid of the Western Allies.
Interesting. And the English?
They are roughly jostled by the English soldiers, who he describes as having vindictive faces, but he notes it was still less harsh than training under Captain Fink.
A grim comparison.
Isn't it? They are put into trucks, experiencing the relief of their victory.
And he observes the difference between them.
Yeah, a striking comparison. Their own famished faces contrasted with the English soldiers' closed, flushed faces. Halls even receives a slap for comparing the easy prisoner ride to their brutal Eastern marches.
Ouch. Did they meet other allies?
Seems so, possibly Americans. Described as tall men with plump, rosy cheeks, behaving almost like hooligans. Their casual bearing, chewing, indifference to their victory strikes him deeply.
How so?
He compares them to himself and his comrades who, though defeated and physically broken, somehow seemed happier than these men who were just performing their duties without any real enthusiasm.
That's a really profound observation on the different costs and experiences of war.
It really is.
So the war's over for him. What about getting home? The epilogue.
Right. The epilogue describes the train journey back through the sunny French countryside. He feels utterly disconnected from the laughing people around him.
Like they're from another planet?
Exactly. Who seem to belong to a different world. He simply can't laugh or forget.
And Halls, is he with him?
No. The longing for Halls is intense. He searches for him everywhere, his thoughts consumed by his friend, needing to hide this emotion with an acquired ability to hide my feelings.
That bond was so strong.
Halls was more than just a friend. He was linked by terrible memories, his only friend in a hostile world, the one who had so often carried my load. He knows he will never forget him or the other soldiers.
He finally gets to his home station.
Yeah. His worn boots scraping the cement. He sees familiar details that suddenly seem so small. He feels that nothing had changed in the place, but he realizes I had changed, fundamentally.
Can't fit in anymore.
Doesn't feel like it. An interaction with station employees highlights this alienation. Showing his papers, the station master dismissively asks if Mannheim is in Bochi, a derogatory term for Germany.
Oh, that's rough.
The soldier corrects him, "No, sir, it's in Germany." Struggling partly due to his accent after being away so long. Just another layer of not belonging.
Even the last few miles.
Agonizing. Despite the beautiful day and the journey's imminent end, his throat is knotted with anguish.
Still carrying it all.
And the book ends with that haunting final line about another man he must forget. Guy Sajer. Himself.
Wow. Reflecting on this incredible journey through the source material, I mean, the sheer scale of the physical and psychological hardships this young soldier endured is almost impossible to fully grasp.
It really is. The relentless cold, the gnawing hunger, the constant violence, the ever-present threat of death, the profound loss of comrades, witnessing unimaginable horrors.
Yeah.
It's just a relentless catalog of suffering that reshapes a person.
Yeah, absolutely reshapes them.
And Sager's account vividly captures that lasting impact. The struggle to reconcile the person he was before the war with the person it forced him to become.
Hmm.
The inability to reconnect with a world that seems unchanged, while he is fundamentally, perhaps irrevocably different.
It leaves us with a really powerful, maybe uncomfortable question for you, the listener, to consider. After living through the unimaginable horrors described in these pages, after being changed so completely, is it ever truly possible to go home again?
Right. Not just physically arriving back.
Yeah, exactly. But returning in mind and spirit, what does it mean to carry the weight of these forgotten experiences, and can they ever truly be forgotten?
A heavy question to end on.
It is something to really think about.